My name's Reverend Hugh Thomas and I'm the Vicar of St Michael's Flixton. A very warm welcome to you all watching here. This is my story. Let me tell you about a story just under 4 years ago now. My wife had been complaining about some pain she had in her chest, and we went to the doctors and they had to send her for more scans. We were really worried, and we were right to be worried when the doctor said to us, please can you turn up on a Friday at 4 o'clock, we need to talk more. I knew this was bad news, as I knew that often, on a Friday at 4 o'clock, most doctors and nurses, if they've been working all week, would want to go home. So we spent some time chatting, and they filled us with the dreadful news that Natalie had cancer and it was spreading around her body. I was deeply worried and concerned because here was the woman I loved, and in front of my eyes, here was the woman that I was losing. I was left with a 5-year-old child to try and console, and I didn't know where our life would end. Then, a few weeks down the line, she had to go for a biopsy so we could find out more. We literally had about 4 weeks of our heads spinning and not quite sure what the journey would take, trying to fill in our son on the way of the problems we were facing, but not always clear ourselves of what the future looked like. When we went for the scan and the biopsy, Natalie fell ill, and within 24 hours she died there in hospital. It was a brutal experience, and one that I've never kind of comprehend, and I'd wish on absolutely nobody. The idea when we left the hospital of going home to my son and telling him that your mother will never return home is the hardest thing I will ever have to do in my life. It was heartbreaking. Nearly 4 years on, I don't quite know how I've managed these last 4 years. I don't quite know how I've supported my son. At times it's been a total struggle. In the early days, I described it like being like a drowning man trying to grab hold of the boat and trying to get back on shore. But to be honest, nothing can quite prepare you for the death of a loved one and someone who dies so close to you. I remember thinking to myself, it might be time I walk away from the church and turn my back on God. My faith had utterly been shattered, and in those first few weeks and months, I didn't know what to do with my life. I just felt I was existing rather than living. And I remember the bishop came to see me, and he looked me in the eyes and he said, you just need time off. You need time off to just contemplate and grieve. That's what you need. And he had the wisdom just to send me away for 6 months. And I remember during those 6 months, one of the strange things that happened, which probably helped me to cling on and probably is the reason I'm still sat here today and still have a faith stronger than ever, to be honest, is that during those first few weeks and months, my mum and dad would stay over and they'd follow me down the stairs. And one of the things that I'll do is I would literally be crying at 4 a.m. on the sofa, cry till no more tears can come anymore. And I literally did dry crying, which I didn't know existed. And I wept and I wept. And my dad would follow me down the stairs and he would come and sit next to me. My dad, being in his mid-70s and not the strongest of guy, was 2 things that happened in my life. Was that he held me in a strength beyond his own. And the only thing I can describe it is that it was God holding me in the depths of my pain and despair. And the other thing that happened is the birds would not stop singing. It didn't matter how many times I told them to shut up, they didn't listen. And I just kept on weeping, and the birds kept singing, and my dad, through the strength of God, continued to hold me. And I suppose when I look back now, I remember going on my first service back after 6 months, and I stood crying in front of my congregation. And I said to him, if I'd come back any sooner, there'll be a few more atheists here today. And I guess that's how I felt at the time. I couldn't stand up for God because I was utterly broken. But yet, I guess in a way, the only way I can describe it is I felt that God continued to stand up for me. God continued to hold me. God continued to hold me and love me in my pain and my tears. And God never deserted me. We're going through a strange time now through this pandemic. And every time when I see these figures, they're not just figures, they're not just statistics, they're real lives, they're real people. And I guess my kind of words of hope I say to you today is, here I am nearly 4 years on, and yes, I'm still broken, and yes, I still weep regularly, and yes, I'm still in pain. But I totally and utterly believe that, firstly, this is not all God's plan. God does not want this pain and suffering. But what I do believe, and this is the second thing which brings me to the words of hope for you today, is that God walks with us in our pain and our tears. God shares our pain and our tears. And if we want evidence of that, we just have to look at the cross. And time after time, that's what I do. I kneel at the foot of the cross and I thank God for all he's brought to my life. And I'll continue to pray for each one of you out there through everything that you're facing in these days, months and years ahead.